the gap that we have today between transportation stocks and the S&P 500 could very well continue to get larger and larger over the coming months. And we can get an idea of how big this gap could get by looking at the performance of transportation stocks against the S&P 500. And we can call this the transportation to S&P 500 ratio. And this is what that ratio looks like going back to 2008. Since October of 2023 right here, the transportation sector has underperformed the S&P 500 by a massive 27%. But if we zoom out just a little bit more, we see that things actually got a lot worse than this in 1999. From January of 1998 to January of 2000, the transportation sector underperformed the S&P 500 by a massive 50%. It wouldn't be so crazy to compare 2025 to 1999. We've shown many other similarities between these two episodes in prior videos. Today's stock market environment is remarkably similar to the one from the late 1990s, and I can prove that simply by showing this chart right here that tells us what percentage of S&P 500 earnings are being driven by growth stocks. Today, 50% of S&P 500 earnings come from growth stocks. In 1999, that number was also particularly elevated. This is incredibly different, for example, to the period between 2001 and 2008, where growth stocks only represented about 10% of S&P 500 earnings. Back here, what's called cyclical stocks, like the transportation sector, represented almost 80% of S&P 500 earnings. Today, that number stands at 30%. This is very important because it means that transportation stocks could continue underperforming the market without necessarily having a negative impact on the S&P 500's performance. In fact, we can argue this could get a lot more extreme than it did in 1999. So while this divergence is suggesting that there is trouble brewing underneath the surface and that has usually not ended well in the past, the truth is that this gap could get much larger than it is today before the S&P 500 catches down to these more cyclical parts of the market like the transportation sector. This is why we have a net long exposure to the stock market today with the active trades that we have on our website. We've been using the recent market volatility as an opportunity to add new trades, and we've actually increased our exposure to technology stocks and are exposed to companies like Amazon, Google, and Klaviyo that we expect to be major outperformers over the next few months. If you want to follow all of our trades step by step, make sure to join our website. Make sure to take advantage of the New Year discount that we're doing to get access to our service at a reasonable price.